What is up, guys, and 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 welcome back to a brand new video. Episode number 35 for the career mode journey. This is the Brazilian Grand Prix. It's quite nice how things are just lining up with career mode and the real F1. Unfortunately, I think after this weekend, that's no longer going to be the case, but let's enjoy it while we can and be safe in the matter that knowing that if there's any kind of penalties in-game, at least we'll get a decision on them straight away. But anyway, let's get into this. Please like, subscribe, and let's get into the daily problems of Marduk Motorsport.
Hate to drop this on you, but we could do with your expertise on this.
Okay, so I think for the third time in our career lifetime, we have the dilemma of firing an employee. I've been quite ruthless in the past, and, you know, at this point, I want to build a bit of loyalty. So we're going to apologize for the antics of our employee, and we'll boost the morale.
Thanks for handling that.
Of those guys. So, yes, job security is now starting to become a thing in the team, and hopefully that'll yield results further down the line. Now let's get into the upgrades of this car. We have a front downforce upgrade set to go on the car tomorrow in game time. So we'll see if that can go on. I think that's going to be our last performance upgrade of this season. Everything else that is required is Spec 3. So everything is an unknown upgrade beyond this point. So the only other way to go now is durability, I'd say. And oh no, it fails. The one upgrade, the last upgrade that we rushed in, and we have rushed this in to be fair, so there was no guarantee it was going to go on. But it has failed, and it won't go on in time for Brazil. We're going to have to wait for the final race in Australia. So the finale, it's ending in Melbourne, and that's quite an interesting dynamic. I've never had a season end there. I'm so used to the season starting there. So everything is a bit upside down and backwards, and, well, everyone in the chat's probably typing away right now. I should be used to things being upside down and backwards, but, well, I've been on top of the world now for too long. Anyway, our driver market, you can see it's going to be quite unlikely that we'll be able to afford Daniel Ricciardo. We need to save up another 4.1 mil at this stage. We do have a few weeks remaining. I think if we're lucky, we might be able to get him. It's really going to be touch and go. So hopefully we can get some department events that are going to boost the income of the team. We are set to go to acclaim level 20 very soon, and I think that'll help things, but yeah, it's going to be a bit of an uphill battle to do that. We need to make sure we pass all of our objectives and yeah, get lucky in certain circumstances. Anyway, our performance index, we haven't got lucky on that front. We are upgrading still, but not as much as some of the other teams. Ferrari having a big jump. They're our nearest rivals. Thankfully, McLaren and Red Bull and Mercedes haven't really moved, apart from Mercedes. But there is the state of play. We currently lead by 13 points over Daniel Ricciardo. Heading into the final two races, Lewis Hamilton a further 3 points behind. Then you got Lando, who's a bit of a dark horse in this race, and Sergio Perez, a driver which has come into form a little bit in the last couple races, winning his home Grand Prix. And meanwhile, in Tiametmarduk land, it is head-scratching time with the setup. So that's with 100% brake pressure. We are going to actually stick with that this weekend. I know I said I was going to test things, and I have been testing things in the background, and am continuing to test things as we actually head into qualifying. Actually, I'm doing a lot of testing with tire pressures. So I'm going to see what works and see what doesn't. And essentially, I'll report to you what I find as we progress through qualifying. So speaking of, let's get into it. So here we go then for the penultimate qualifying session of the season. And here's an interesting thought that's just popped into my head. What's going to happen with career mode in the F1 2022 game? Because this race in Brazil this weekend is a sprint race. Are we going to have sprint weekends in career mode? Potentially. That's going to be a weird dynamic and one that I kind of don't really like. I don't like fiddling with the formula all too much when it takes away from the race weekend. But regardless, that's something we're going to have to gear up for because there's going to be like 7 sprint weekends next season, potentially. Maybe more. I don't know. You guys will have to let me know on that one. Anyway, I've been testing away with qualifying. I think the biggest thing that I found, the most effective thing that I found when it came to the tyre temperatures was actually cooling off in between qualifying laps. So this is a used set of tyres. This is our 3rd lap on these, I think. And on the previous lap, we cooled the tyres all the way down to 80 degrees. And we've gone again. And look at how much time we found. 5/10 compared to our previous best. Actually, 6/10. And that gets us inside the top 10 in Q1. But believe it or not, this is actually the fastest time that I did throughout the rest of qualifying. I went slower and slower and slower the further I got into sessions. My mind was elsewhere. My mind was on tyre pressures. In Q1, the tyre pressures were the highest they were. Then I was gradually lowering the tyre pressures to see what I could get away with. And the thing that I didn't do was actually do a cool down lap to bring the tyre temps right down. I was more relying on the tyre pressures to keep the temps down, when in actual fact, I should have done the thing I did originally in Q1. So, with that in mind, we didn't get any faster. We were gradually losing a 10th every session, to the point where we ended up in P10. I think we knocked out Nico Rosberg. He ended up P11. So, we're in the top 10, but we're compromised by starting on the soft. So, it's not ideal heading into the race.
Tough luck there. It's not quite where we'd want to be on the grid, but chin up, it's not the end of the world.
Formula One returns to Sao Paulo once again with the stage set for what promises to be another classic Brazilian Grand Prix. Sebastian Vettel famously clinched his 3rd championship here in 2012, and in 2016, Max Verstappen treated us to one of the finest wet weather drives of all time. Anthony Davidson, a lot of talented drivers out on the track today, but what will stand out for you?
Well, Crofty, my focus is 100% on the front of the grid. Like you said, we're seeing lots of strong competition across those positions, so it would be super interesting to see the fight for that front spot. Personally speaking, I'm hoping for plenty of overtakes.
Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting race. Lewis Hamilton lines up on pole position, and Valtteri Bottas will line up alongside. Moving on to the rest of the grid, we have Perez, Benjamin, Daniel Ricciardo, they've taken a grid penalty, and Russell, Tigtum, Leclerc, Armstrong, and Esteban Ocon. Gasly, they'll be starting further back after an earlier grid penalty. Stroll, Mick Schumacher, and Latifi. Giovinazzi, they've taken a grid penalty. Vettel, Yuki Tsunoda, and Carlos Sainz. Verstappen, Norris, Mazepin, and Nico Rosberg rounds off the grid. And with lights out just moments away, it's time to go down to the track.
So here we are then on the grid of the Brazilian Grand Prix, lining up in P4 on the grid. So many people with grid penalties, one of which my teammate Nico Rosberg is starting right at the back. Lando Norris, outside chance of the championship, still, he's starting at the back. And as is Daniel Ricciardo, though not as much of a penalty, he's still inside the top 10, but is starting further behind me. So we're going to make sure that Ricciardo pays the price for taking that engine penalty. We're going to make it very, very difficult for him to overtake because, well, we need as many points as we can get. Lewis Hamilton is starting ahead of us, though, so he's going to be the danger man. He might be very well leading this championship or very well close to it by the end of today's race. We're going to have to hope that the Mercedes don't run away with this one. Strategy-wise, everyone on the softs. If it was down to my choice, I'd be on the mediums. But there we go. Here we go. Time for the penultimate race of Season 2. And we are underway, finally. Thank you, Michael Massey, for making us wait an absolute age. And we head into Turn 1 now. Thankfully, not losing any position side by side with Ricciardo as we head into turn 1. So we've maintained track position, which is the main thing. Lewis Hamilton leads from Sergio Perez, from Valtteri Bottas, then me, Ricciardo looking ever racy in that McLaren with that Mercedes power unit in the back of that thing. He is going to be very difficult to contain once the DRS gets enabled in 2 laps time. Here we go, rounding the middle sector. You can see we're already losing touch with the top 3. That's just the deficit of us to the top teams at this stage. I think we're around about half a second off their pace. I'm probably not driving at my absolute best and getting the most out of this setup and these tires. But I think once things switch on and you know, everything being equal, I think the ballpark is around half a second to these guys. But, you know, we can work with that. If we can, you know, stay in the slipstream, stay in the DRS, that keeps us in contention with faster cars. But at this stage, I don't think the car's there. We've been suffering with overheating all weekend on the soft, and unfortunately, it's plaguing us even still now in the race. So I think the sooner we can get onto the medium compound tires, the better for us in this race. Ricciardo overtakes us. I mean, I had nothing really to offer in a straight line. I think we're running 10-8 wings or 10-6 wings. Either way, it is high downforce, I'd say. But yeah, nothing much we can do there. We're trying to minimize the weaknesses of our car through the middle sector. And look at that overheating, 106 degrees on the right front tire. That's just absolutely no good. The tire's not in their working window, and as such, we're even slower than what we should be. Here's Charles Leclerc now on the move in the Ferrari. We're going to go defensive on him. We've already lost touch with Daniel Ricciardo, I'd say. He's now outside of a second. So it's imperative that we now limit the damage to our championship rivals. Leclerc is really, I'd say, the last car who can realistically overtake us in this stint. There's actually a massive gap forming. Not there, not on the inside. We closed that gap. The gap that I'm referring to is the gap between Leclerc and George Russell behind. That is opening up massively. He's in the Alfa Romeo and he's 5.5 seconds behind. So I'm trying my hardest to keep this track position over the Ferrari, even if it's costing us time. But unfortunately, we couldn't hold him back any longer, and Leclerc is through for P5. So it looks like I'm about to fall into no man's land at this stage, unless I can keep touch with Leclerc, which I seem to be doing for the time being. We are holding on to his slipstream and DRS, so that's keeping us in the fight. It's keeping us close enough to the race leaders, speaking of whom, are struggling. That's Lewis Hamilton going from first to third. He's got overtaken by Sergio Perez on the previous straight, and now he gets overtaken by his teammate Valtteri Bottas. So I'm not sure what's happening to Hamilton. I couldn't ask anything about him on the team radio, but he seems to be struggling for pace, and he's having an early pit stop here onto another set of soft compound tires. So not only is Hamilton struggling for pace, but he's having to put himself in traffic to re-overtake people. That's Lando Norris in the back end of the midfield runners, trying to get through traffic himself, has made a major mistake there. It's almost as if he's gone from no throttle to full throttle, like a light switch at the exit of turn 1, and he's looped round.
They're in third. The difference is 5.8 seconds. The time last lap.
Okay, guess we're not going to hear any further about our rival, who is that man on screen, Daniel Ricciardo. I wanted to check what he was doing in terms of pit strategy, but that all but confirms it, doesn't it? Onto the hard compound tyres. He'll easily go to the end of the Grand Prix from here, but this is our pit window now on lap 14. So we're going on to mediums, and with our tyre wear upgrades, we should be able to make it to the end. Even the tyres now still overheating as we're burning off fuel. I think the deeper we get into this race, I think the easier it should get, but particularly now that we're switching on to mediums, which have a wider working range, should mean that we can put our tyre temperature troubles behind us. So out we go onto the circuit, double stacking there for Marduk Motorsport. Nico not too badly affected there, so I think we dodged a bullet there, thankfully. But yeah, we're almost halfway through this race, and now our race can truly begin. We were about 3 or 4 seconds behind the likes of Daniel Ricciardo, and even the top 3, to be fair. They're about 5 seconds off. So I'm not saying, you know, it's game on again, but we might be able to claw back some ground in this race. We are catching up to Charles Leclerc. He's now within a second of us now, and we're going to start getting DRS, and we're going to be able to recover a little bit of fuel, save some ERS, and then hopefully we'll be able to leapfrog past Charles Leclerc, and that'll get us closer to the likes of Daniel Ricciardo. So it seems to be working at this stage. The race leaders are lapping slower than me. Well, at least Bottas and Ricciardo are. Max Verstappen is a different story. As we get up the inside of Charles Leclerc, he gave us the big squeeze, much like we did to him earlier. So all's fair in love and war. And we're now in the top 5 once again. Another yellow flag up here. This is for, I think, one of the Haas cars just retiring. So that's absolutely fine. There was no safety car intervention on that occasion. Lewis Hamilton now makes his second stop. So we get his position as well. We are effectively ahead of Lewis Hamilton. He's going to chase us down in the dying laps. And we're only one position behind Ricciardo. So all things considered, this isn't a disastrous race result if things end how they are at the moment. But we're actually catching Ricciardo. We're now in the DRS and slipstream, well, of a lap car. But we're well and truly in DRS range of Ricciardo now that we've got that first bout of DRS. And there he is right there on the hard compound tyres. I think in the dying laps, the hard compound runners will probably have the pace over us. But for the time being, the mediums are still holding on really well. So we're making the most of the tyre advantage. We're all over the back of Ricciardo. If we play our cards right, we could get P2 in this race, which I think would be an absolute muggery. We'd be able to steal a crazy result, which I didn't think was possible. And Ricciardo realizes it, goes up the inside of Valtteri Bottas. Bottas holding on quite well there. They both get a shocking exit, and we might be able to get both of these guys. Bottas with no DRS. He's going defensive. He's vulnerable. We go around the outside of him. Can we get Ricciardo though?
Nice move.
No is the answer. He's had a shocking run through there, and that invites Valtteri into the party once again, side by side with the Mercedes. Here comes Hamilton trying to make a move on Charles Leclerc, and Leclerc gets up the inside of Bottas at the same time. Is he going to keep the position though? No is the answer. Bottas holds on somehow. So it's a Mercedes sandwich for Charles Leclerc. And, well, that's a lap car. Goodbye. Now we have a clear run at Daniel Ricciardo for P2. Championship rival right here. How is he going to play this? Goes defensive? No, he doesn't. He leaves the door open. And we're going to take that P2 heading down into turn 1 with 5 laps remaining in this Brazilian Grand Prix. This is very, very spicy. If we can get some points over Ricciardo in this race, obviously we probably will get some points over Lewis Hamilton as he goes side by side with us around the outside. Nothing doing there. We keep P2. Yeah, if we can get points over these guys in this race, I'm sorry to say this, but this is going to be almost academic for our championship potentially. As we see another yellow flag. I think that might be the second Haas car going slowly. No, it's fine. Tsunoda pulling off to the side, and Daniel Ricciardo takes this opportunity to get up the inside. Massive slipstream heading into turn 1, and I was a bit preoccupied with the lap car to realise that Daniel was actually having a look up the inside into turn 1, so nearly caught us napping. Thankfully, we still keep the position. Meanwhile, in Lewis Hamilton land, still stuck behind his teammate Valtteri Bottas. I mean, at this point, Bottas just needs to get out of the way, and at the very least, just let Hamilton go through, even if it lets the Ferrari go, because then Hamilton will have a clear run at Leclerc, which I think makes sense. A DRS train with Bottas at the head of it. Oh my goodness, that's the second Ferrari gone. And spinning right in front of Lando, who did the exact same thing at the start of the Grand Prix. So McLaren and Ferrari are both bottling it in some sense. As there's the replay. Exact same issue. 0 to 100% throttle in no time at all is not good for the rear tyres, I'd say, from my expert opinion. But anyway, Daniel Ricciardo on the move once again, still trying to find an avenue past us. As this race wears on, our advantage diminishes. I think at this point, maybe the McLaren is starting to face, I think actually from this point, maybe even a few laps ago, the McLaren has been faster with those tyres, just holding on that little bit better than our mediums. And here he goes up the inside. That momentum coming out of nowhere. Ricciardo dumping all of the ERS as he heads into turn 4, slightly compromised, and we get up the inside. Ricciardo leaves the door completely open on exit, and we slide on through for P2 once again. Ricciardo out of nowhere, and then straight away, Benjamin Daly out of nowhere. He just left the door open, and then right at the last second, actually, turned out of the corner. So this line in from Ricciardo was a bit weird. I mean, he didn't fully maximize the exit. I don't know why he was hugging the inside. I mean, look at the steering lock here. That is amateurish stuff there, and then realizes, oh, we're going to crash, so I've got to avoid the Marduk Motorsport car coming up the inside. So thankfully, Ricciardo did that. Otherwise, I don't know how many points we'd be scoring out of this race. But anyway, it is now the last lap of the Grand Prix, and Ricciardo has got to be dumping ERS, as the AI always do at the back end. He's been saving ERS, and now he's going full send. Have we got enough straight line speed to keep him at bay? We're going to defend the inside much earlier this time. Ricciardo goes outside, and I can't defend that. How can I defend that? He's got better tyres than me at this point. I tried to go in as late as I could. If I went in any later, I'd probably hit him. So, Ricciardo is going to get P2. Unless he makes a major mistake in the second half of this lap, or if we can get close enough to drag race him up to the line, I think he's getting 18 points today. Still, Bottas, what is he doing? In P4, holding up his teammate, holding up Leclerc. That is going to be absolutely costly for Lewis Hamilton in the driver's standings. Sergio Perez is running away with his championship. Well, he's fighting his way into the championship with another win. Bottas getting very close as we come up to the line. I nearly ran out of fuel.
Thank you for all your hard work out there. That was a strong drive and a good finish. Well done.
But there we go. An unlikely podium, which we will absolutely take. We're looking good heading into the last race.
A great race then, very much as we've come to expect. And a fantastic win here at Interlagos. Anthony, tell me, what was it that helped them achieve this success?
I think a large part of the result comes down to temperament. They were able to keep their heads when everyone around them was losing theirs, and that's allowed them to get the best out of the car, to maximise the strategy, and to stay out of trouble.
Red Bull put up an outstanding fight for the front position today, and it's great to see it paid off for them. They do so much for the sport that you can't help but be delighted by today's race win.
Well, I said it at the start of the episode, Sergio Perez is a man who is on form, and he's backed it up again with another win. 2 on the trot now for the Red Bull driver. And, well, I think we'll need to check the standings, because I think he might buy himself into this championship chat, I'd say. 25 points for him. Max Verstappen and the other Red Bull gets the fastest lap on a 2-stop. And speaking of Lewis Hamilton, also on the 2-stop, but unable to really make it work. He's dropped a few points there, and that's unfortunate. Daniel Ricciardo there with the fastest lap, well, personal best on the last lap, 106.1. So he was absolutely flying at the end of the Grand Prix, and there was nothing I could do about it. His tyres held on really well, but I think he saved all of his ERS and really punched it on those last 2 laps. Unfortunately, nothing I could do with my tyres wearing out on the mediums. We went for an aggressive strategy, going on the mediums. It got us back in the fight with the race leaders, or at least the podium runners. And that's about the best I could have done in that race with the tyre temperature issues on the softs. So we lead the championship by 10 points heading into the final Grand Prix of the season. Sergio Perez overtakes Hamilton, and Hamilton, well, it's looking rather unlikely that he'll win this championship. He needs a race win, and he needs me to be absolutely nowhere, essentially. So, 4 people in the fight for the standings. Norris not having a good day as well, starting from the back. He's now mathematically not a chance of winning. So there's only 4 people who can win. But it looks most likely that heading into the Australian Grand Prix, we will have an Australian F1 champion for the first time. Or it's going to be Sergio Perez. I mean, either way, I think history might be rewritten in this next episode of career mode. Or it could be completely boring and Hamilton takes his 8th title. And that would be, well, that would be rather unfortunate, but hell of a comeback. Either way, thank you guys so much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe to the channel if you need to see plenty more racing game content. Let me know down in the comments who you think is going to win this series. We have a nice advantage, but we don't have such a nice car. It's going to be highly dependent on form, whether the tyres can work. It's been a long time since I've raced at the Australian Grand Prix. Hopefully the tyres can hold on, and hopefully we've found a setup that can work. We do have one downforce upgrade heading into that race, which will hopefully boost the performance. And who knows what the AI teams are going to do heading into the last race, upgrade-wise. You would hope that they won't bring any upgrades, so it'll be a little bit closer to their form. So it's all up in the air. Thank you guys so much for watching. Until the finale, I'll see you next time.